It's exciting to meet beings of greater mind or lesser mind. And where does it end? It doesn't end. It doesn't end.
We do not want to accept responsibility. We do not want to accept our greatness. So it's very easy for any system of thought, religious or otherwise, that comes along. It's very easy to play on that, to play on our insecurities, to assure us all is well, we'll all be taken care of. We lap that up. So don't blame religion. Blame our own insecurities, which has allowed religion to flourish and which has allowed so many systems of thought that are disempowering to flourish throughout human history. That's why we can't get out of it.
I now present to you Mr. and Mrs. Richard Buck Filipowski.
Experiencing something in the present day that is a trigger to something that is very emotionally charged for us. So now we have become even more disconnected from the reality of what actually is.
The new dream, like a thunderstorm in our brain, and its electrical strikes through our synaptic skies to the earth of our being, creates a chemical cascade in our body that prepares our body for conquest, achievement, a relishing experience emotionally. But we would have no conquest. Indeed, we would have no relishment if we had not first had that hologram and those chemicals that made us, or rather changed us, from being fearful entities into fearless entities after a dream. The frontal lobe is the crowning achievement of the human brain. Frontal lobe. This frontal lobe allows us a distinguishedness to change our minds.
Through the workings of the nervous system and the particular way that it implements quantum effects. Very distinct, specific way, not general, not fuzzy, not imprecise. That it absolutely does open the door for free will being a possibility that does not violate modern scientific tenets, and that's consistent to a certain extent with people's subjective impression that we do have free will.
What separates us from all other species is the ratio of our frontal lobe to the rest of the brain. The frontal lobe is an area of the brain that's responsible for firm intention, for decision making, for regulating behavior, for inspiration. It is the seat of what causes us to take information from our environment and process it and store it in our brain to make decisions or choices that are different than the decisions and choices that we've made in the past. The brain is made up of tiny nerve cells called neurons. These neurons have tiny branches that reach out and connect to other neurons to form a neural net. Each place where they connect is integrated into a thought or a memory. Now, the brain builds up all its concepts by the law of associative memory. For example, ideas, thoughts, and feelings are all constructed and interconnected in this neural net, and all have a possible relationship with one another. The concept and the feeling of love, for instance, is stored in this vast neural net. But we build the concept of love from many other different ideas. Some people have love connected to disappointment. When they think about love, they experience the memory of pain, sorrow, anger, and even rage. Rage may be linked to hurt, which may be linked to a specific person, which then is connected back to love.
Every observation can be looked upon as a quantum measurement. This quantum measurement produces memory. We always perceive something after reflection in the mirror of memory. It is this reflection in the mirror of memory that gives us that sense of I-ness, who I am.
The brain does not know the difference between what it sees in its environment and what it remembers, because the same specific neural nets are then firing. We know physiologically that nerve cells that fire together wire together. If you practice something over and over again, those nerve cells have a long-term relationship. If you get angry on a daily basis, if you get frustrated on a daily basis, if you suffer on a daily basis, if you give reasons for the victimization in your life, you're rewiring and reintegrating that neural net on a daily basis, and that neural net now has a long-term relationship with all those other nerve cells called an identity. We also know that nerve cells that don't fire together no longer wire together. They lose their long-term relationship because every time we interrupt the thought process that produces a chemical response in the body, every time we interrupt it, those nerve cells that are connected to each other start breaking the long-term relationship. If we practice our mental rehearsal and our skill in being able to do it will show that certain brain circuits will grow as a result of our effort. It'll get easier to do, in other words. If we accept that idea, then it will allow us to go back the next day and do it with more certainty and with more acceptance. That in itself is no different than praying. You see, there's no religious text that says thought doesn't matter. There's no religious text that doesn't say your prayer and your intention shouldn't be answered by God. But explaining how that happens is what quantum physics and the observer is all about. But still, when we can make thought more real than anything else, our brain is designed to do that. The frontal lobe, with its enormous space, is the altar in which we place a thought. And it gives us the permission to hold a thought for an extended period of time, and it lowers the volume to the external stimuli. We lose track of time and space. That's the moment we're stepping into the quantum field. That's the moment that now we're making thought more real than anything else. We are physically, chemically, emotional human beings. That's not a bad thing. It only becomes a limitation when we keep accessing those same emotions and those same attitudes on a daily basis and go nowhere in terms of our change or evolution in our life.
How can we say that we have lived fully every day? By simply experiencing the same emotions that we're addicted to every day. What we're actually saying is, I have to reconfirm who I am, and my personality is, I have to do this, I have to go here, I have to be that. A master is quite a different cat. It is one that sees the day as an opportunity in time to create avenues of reality and emotions that are unborn, of realities that are unborn, that the day becomes a fertilization of infinite tomorrows.
There's a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is like a little mini factory, and it is a place that assembles certain chemicals that match certain emotions that we experience. Those particular chemicals are called peptides. They're small chain amino acid sequences. The body's basically a carbon unit that makes about 20 different amino acids all together to formulate its physical structure. In the hypothalamus, we take small chain proteins called peptides, and we assemble them into certain neuropeptides or neurohormones that match the emotional states that we experience on a daily basis. So there's chemicals for anger, and there's chemicals for sadness, and there's chemicals for victimization. There's chemicals for lust. There's a chemical that matches every emotional state that we experience. And the moment that we experience that emotional state in our body or in our brain, that hypothalamus will immediately assemble the peptide that then releases it through the pituitary into the bloodstream. The moment it makes it into the bloodstream, it finds its way to different centers or different parts of the body. Now, every single cell in the body has these receptors on the outside.
And one cell can have thousands of receptors studding its surface, kind of opening up to the outside world. And when a peptide docks on a cell, it literally, like a key going into a lock, sits on the receptor surface and attaches to it and kind of moves the receptor, and kind of like a doorbell buzzing, sends a signal into the cell.
It's party time!
What happens in adulthood is that most of us who've had our glitches along the way are operating in an emotionally detached place, or we're operating as if today were yesterday.
What is it?
Mixed.
Change in itself means then that we have to abandon our old self. It means that we have to leave behind our identity for a few moments and begin to speculate who we could be. To change means modifying our behavior enough so that it's permanent.
Our experiences color what we know. So there is no completely objective appraisal of anything, because our appraisal of everything has to do with our previous experiences and our emotions. Everything has an emotional weighting to it.
We've gone from emotions being these spiritual, immaterial things to things, they're not even things, to actual molecules with molecular weights and peptides with sequences and structures.
Science knows now that the hypothalamus makes neuropeptides, and those neuropeptides are strong chemicals.
Well, here's the story of the peptide in the cell. The peptides find the receptors and dock onto them and stay attached. Then they come off, and then they can come back on again. And while they're there, they are changing the cell. A receptor that has a peptide sitting in it sets off a whole cascade of biochemical events, some of which changes the nucleus of the cell. Each cell is definitely alive, and each cell has a consciousness, particularly if we define consciousness as the point of view of an observer. There is always the perspective of the cell. The cell knows where it is, the cell knows where it's going, the cell knows what proteins it's making, the cell knows whether it's about to divide or whether it's in a program to stop dividing. In fact, the cell is the smallest unit of consciousness in the body.
I'm hungry.
The cells are yelling up to the brain saying, "Hungry! We haven't gotten our fix today." And it's going to start sending impressions to the brain, and the brain is going to start to formulate imagery. It's going to sound like voices in our head.
I'm hungry.
To think of a reason why we should be depressed.
Hungry.
Think of a reason why we should be confused. Think of a reason for our own suffering. And the body is going to be telling the brain that it's not getting its chemical needs met. And so the brain will then activate and start going to our past situations and flashing pictures to our frontal lobe.
Oh yeah! We've commandeered an entire serving planet! Yeah! Keep it coming! Keep it coming! Oh yeah!
But my definition of an addiction is something really simple. Something that you can't stop. We bring to ourselves situations that will fulfill the biochemical craving of the cells of our body by creating situations that meet our chemical need.
It always happens to me. Why?
So my definition really means that if you can't control your emotional state, you must be addicted to it.
The people that we really love are people who are willing to share our emotional needs, our feelings, whatever they are. Whether they are sexual, whether they are victimized, poor me, poor you, whether they are power, you need somebody to control you so you feel like you're in control.
No, ma'am, don't dip your half-eaten shrimp back into the cocktail sauce.
Screw you and your health coach. I am the bride's sister. I'll stick my ass in the cocktail sauce if I damn well please.
Come on. I want you to get out there and serve, make sure everybody has a full glass. Fun. Sweetie, you won't do anything about it.
Me show you what women want.
What is reality? How do we know there's reality? They have taken laboratory animals and they've hooked up electrodes in certain parts of their brain that produce those neuropeptides. And those neuropeptides are such strong chemicals that, given the fact that they train the laboratory animal to press a lever to get that chemical release, that neuropeptide release, it would choose the neuropeptide release more than hunger, more than sex, more than thirst, more than sleep. As a matter of fact, it went to the point of physical exhaustion and collapsed before it would take care of itself physically. And that's really what stress does to our body. We become so addicted to the stress in our lives that we can't quit our job, even though it doesn't serve us. We can't leave our relationship because it doesn't serve us. We can't make choices because the stimulus and the responses produce the chemistry that clouds our choices, and we're no different than the dog who lacks its ability to make choices because of its smaller frontal lobe.
So how can anyone really say they're in love with a specific person, for example? They're only in love with the anticipation of the emotions they're addicted to. Because the same person could fall out of favor the next week by not complying.
No. You got the punchline wrong. It's a photographer's joke. Go on about your music. Are you okay?
Right, I thought that couldn't have been some girl.
When?
Just now.
I was with the groom.
Hey, I can read it.
I was with the groom just now. Yeah, he loves Paulette. Where? Polacks, they all look the same in a tux.
Everybody secretly is an adventurer. Everybody loves the adventure. It's just taking that first step. And once they have the moment of insight, that moment of insight carries frequency. It carries a message. The cells of the body are enlivened by possibility. They're enlivened by unknown potentials. They're enlivened by a future history or future opportunity that may be down the rabbit hole a little further. And if they allow themselves to experience the quandary and the mysticism and the possibility that when they emerge from the rabbit hole, they're a different person. And now they go back into their world And because they've processed that information and left footprints in the mind and in the brain, their perception of the world will never be the same.
How can we say that we have lived fully every day by simply experiencing the same emotions that we're addicted to every day? A master is quite a different cat.
Another drink?
It is one that sees the day as an opportunity in time to create avenues of reality and emotions that are unborn, that the day become infinite tomorrows.
To the groom!
To the groom.
What's up, guys?
What's up, man?
Hello. What do we need?
Some boxes. Put out! Yeah, baby!
Yes, it's a psychosomatic network, and yes, some of us, particularly adolescent boys, are, under the control of lower centers. The eye isn't in control of the molecules of emotion. It's more, I don't want to say at the mercy of it, but these rapid eye movements that help us decide where to focus are mediated in the midbrain, and you can map opiate receptors there and receptors for many of the other peptides. So once again, the relevant search command that's going on is related to finding a certain emotional state.
Oh, God. She wouldn't fall for me, no.
Oh, mama! Woo! What the hell are you waiting for? Come on, you little pussies! Jeez, I can't believe you guys! What are you? Oh, come on, just get the hell out of the way! Hi there, honey! Come on, baby, you know you want it. Oh, don't give me that look.
What about people who are addicted to sex?
Actually, sex itself is an invention to allow us to see into the future. Think about that for a while.
Hello there, big boy. Is there a rocket in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
Polka music, okay?
I'm gonna play
These
the
people
polka
want to hear
music.
some
I know
polka
we're gonna
music.
play some-
You can't have a Polish wedding without polka music!
No, would you leave it alone? Keep your
How can you have a Polish wedding without any Polish music?
hands off my equipment!
It ain't a Polish wedding without a polka!
deserts you, and your feet disappear. You'll find some old shoes, wasted one without a peer. Where we go from here?
Our mind literally creates our body.
But it all starts in the cell. And who gives the cells the order? The orders come from the neural net in our brains, which are based on the experiences and information that we've logged in there. And we use a certain box of solutions to our life that causes chemistry to take place. So in order for us to change the chemistry, we would literally have to change the neural net, which means we'd have to change our identity, which means we'd have to change our attitude, or change the way in which we interact with our environment. And every time we keep being the same person and keep experiencing the same attitudes, all we're doing is reinforcing ourselves as our identity.
I once did a little gig in a woman's prison they're all heroin addicts, and by teaching them that they have receptors for the heroin, and that the more heroin that they take, their ability to make their own internal endorphins, their own internal heroin, basically starts to decline. And then the receptors start to become subsensitive, or there's actually less of them. So there's these actual changes, and then this new information about how less brain cells are being made, so that people get kind of, in all addictions, they get stuck in old patterns.
The person's mental life becomes dominated by pain, such that everything that they perceive is colored by the pain. And sometimes every way that they react and everything that they do becomes all about their pain.
One of the things about receptors is they change in their sensitivity. If a given receptor for a given drug or internal juice is being bombarded for a long time at a high intensity, it will literally shrink up. There will be less of them, or it will be hooked up in such a way that it is desensitized or downregulated. So the same amount of drug or internal juice will elicit a much smaller response.
Bombarding the cell with the same attitude and the same chemistry over and over again on a daily basis. When that cell finally decides to divide, when it produces a sister cell or a daughter cell, that next cell will have more receptor sites for those particular emotional neuropeptides and less receptor sites for vitamins, minerals, nutrients, fluid exchange, or even the release of waste products or toxins. Now, all aging is a result of improper protein production. What happens when we age? Our skin loses elasticity. Well, elastin is a protein. What happens to our enzymes? We don't digest as well. What happens to our synovial fluid? Those are proteins. They become brittle and stiff. What happens to our bones? They become thin. So all aging is a result of improper protein production. So then the question arises, does it really matter what we eat? And does nutrition really have an effect if the cell doesn't even have the receptor sites after 20 years of emotional abuse to even receive or let in the nutrients that are necessary for its health?
If we know the thoughts of a person, we will best know them by their addiction, their continuous, over 24 hours, in a continuum of what emotions they display in their body. We shall know their thoughts.
I hate you.
We never, ever reincarnate to the I love you so much people. We always reincarnate to the situations of why we hate ourselves.
I hate you. You get it? You suck! Look at you! You're ugly! You're worth nothing! You get it all! I hate you!
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
No one has ever came along and ever given you sufficient, intelligent knowledge about your beautiful self, how you work from the inside out. Why do you have addictions? Because you have nothing better. You have dreamt of nothing better because no one has ever taught you how to dream better.
There's data now that when people are addicted to, whether it's cocaine, heroin, nicotine, alcohol, all of them seem to share a property of blocking the growth of new brain cells. And yet, it can completely come back when the drug taking has stopped.
Oh, poopy.
If you don't see the traps, you have to go through the crap until you see the traps. Because if you don't see it, it's your only teaching machine. It's your only way for you to come to understand something new. So the universe brings these things to your door, and there is learning in them for you if you are willing to reflect upon them and think beyond the rigid mindset.
Can I? Wow. Borrow some toothpaste? Thanks.
When I talk about we disappearing, I don't mean that we physically disappear. What I mean is that we move out of the area of the brain that has to do with our personality, that has to do with our association to people, our association to places, our association to things and times and events. We don't exist in the associative centers in our brain that reaffirms our identity and reaffirms our personality.
We now have science to back up what our thoughts do and how they make our bodies weak. A lot of scientists who are actually studying this with behavioral kinesiology and other ways, showing that thoughts make your body weak. And thoughts pretty much create your reality. They create what you're going to think about yourself. If you're fat but you think you're wonderful, you'll be wonderful. But most women we're compared all the time with impossible images, from Barbie to models, and so we think that our whole currency is how we look and how other people are going to perceive us, and we're always up against impossible standards.
What is relative to their own emotional addiction are movies and dramas and news and all the media that is so beautiful today in providing people with experiences without having to be there. And yet, that does not define human greatness.
They're so hypnotized by their environment through the media, through television, through people living and creating ideals that everybody struggles to become, that no one can actually become in terms of physical appearance and definitions of beauty and valor that are all illusions, that most people surrender and live their life in mediocrity. And they may live that life, and the soul may never really, their desire may never really rise to the surface, so they may want to be something else. But if it does rise to the surface, and they ask themselves if there is something more, or why am I here? What is the purpose of life? Where am I going? What happens when I die? They start to ask those questions. They start to flirt and interact with the perception that they may be having a nervous breakdown. And in reality, what they're doing is that their old concepts of how they viewed their life in the world start to fall apart.
That's why very few people make this journey, because it's deeply unsettling. All of the molds that we have lived by have to be broken, and we have to liberate ourselves in this way. And sometimes there's an awkward period between the comfort that we knew before and the real state of comfort when we are the Lord of our being, which follows that interval of chaos. Most people, when they get into the chaos, give up hope and go back to the old false securities. They get to live a reasonable life and they get to die in some sort of peace, but they haven't advanced spiritually at all in that experiment that we call the life.
We're in completely new territory in our brain. And because we're in completely new territory, we're rewiring the brain, literally reconnecting to a new concept. Then ultimately, it changes us from the inside out. If I change my mind, will I change my choices? If I change my choices, will my life change? Why can't I change? What am I addicted to? What will I lose that I'm chemically attached to? And what person, place, thing, time, or event that I'm chemically attached to that I don't want to lose because I may have to experience the chemical withdrawal from that. Hence the human drama.
This life is but a page in an enormous book in which we will always be who we are, but always with the inherent needling of ambitious pursuit, a pursuit that takes us from the boring tedium of self-reflection, of self-hate, and to self-creation of new dreams. And we are ambitious gods. It's the only planet in the Milky Way that has habitation that is steeped in enormous subjugation of religion. You know why that is? Is because people have set up right and wrong.
I did say there is no right and wrong. Does that mean that it's a free-for-all? Absolutely not. I mean, the problem that I have with right and wrong in those categories is not that I want a free-for-all, but that right and wrong doesn't go nearly far enough.
They have never sinned. They have never wronged. Wronged, yes, in moral confrontations with society, but that's their adversity. That's why they're here. To wrong, to learn, to search, and use the wisdom of that to create yet greater dreams.
There's nobody keeping records up there. The records are here, and I'm going to have to deal with them. That's far more painful than a record-keeping God up in the skies. So anyone who's setting out on the path of enlightenment will be absolutely impeccable in everything that they do. Is it because of fear of damnation? No. Or of the punishment of God, or because I have sinned and haven't got forgiveness? No, no, no. I mean, these are all excuses that keeps us away from the real problem. The really enlightened person will see every action has a reaction with which I must deal. And if I'm wise, I'm not going to do stuff that will cause me to have to face it and resolve it and balance it in my soul later. That's the real criterion.
That God, or the fundamental level of reality, depending on what people describe, it really, I mean, theoretically, it should be everywhere. It's something, you know, exactly how it would manifest or how God would manifest in the world is a more complicated issue. But I think that certainly from a more traditional religious perspective, people have kind of gotten away from God, the person.
There's been a great shift from God up there or out there or in there, wherever, to the God within. And that's an improvement, but we don't want to get some idea that God can be within and still be separate, which is what most people think. They think the God within is like some of those alien movies, you know, where some being breaks out from my chest. God is not within in that stupid sense. What it means is that in God we live, move, and have our being, that we ourselves, in fact, are divine.
What's the relation between my God self and your God self? There is no relationship because it's only one God self. It's in both of us.
All people are divine people. Is it not ironic that all would say that this is the voice of the devil or that this is heresy? If this is heresy, then what is promised to everyone is an imbuement with God that is inseparable.
Knowledge allows the brain to begin to become wired, and we will begin to see what has always existed, but because we live in those routine automatic programs, we're unable to see because we're processing mind from the familiar. To learn knowledge means we're learning new things, and to learn new things means we're gathering information and creating the circuitry now to begin to develop the sensitivity, to begin to see things for the first time.
There is enormous potential to change the kind of behaviors and characteristic patterns that we've fallen into. In fact, if you've listened and have remembered anything that I've said, your physiology is different than it was before that. That is something that Eric Kandel, the recent winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Science, said very eloquently at a talk, that basically memory has been encoded, your genetic structure has changed, and while we previously would talk about the nervous system as this very rigid thing that didn't have much capacity for change, we now know that on many levels that isn't true. And actually there's a tremendous amount of plasticity, which basically means ability to change within the nervous system.
And if you look at the structure of the human brain in detail, you see that it's specifically designed, it's carefully engineered to experience the unified field, to experience the unity of life.
We are all connected. I mean, I think the most fundamental thing is we're all connected by an energy field. We swim in a sea of light, basically, which is the zero-point field. And I say, first of all, you get away from the whole idea of separateness, because separateness is the biggest problem of the world now.
You take this notion of an entangled universe and you apply it to human experience, because human experience is part of the universe as well. And then you say, well, let's assume that experience is entangled, then how would it manifest? And we can start going through ways in which it could manifest. If there's a connection with another mind, we call it telepathy. If there's a connection to some other object somewhere else, we'd call it clairvoyance. If there's a connection that happens to transcend time, we'd call it precognition. If there's a connection in which my intention is expressed out in the world some way, we might call it psychokinesis or distant healing or something of that sort. So you can go through a list of perhaps 12 kinds of psychic experience that have gotten labels over the years, like telepathy, but this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
People ask, why are you so interested in the Planck scale, the very ultimately tiny in terms of spirituality? Because obviously spirituality is out there, it's everywhere. And the answer is that yes, the Planck scale is the ultimately small, but it's also everywhere. Wherever you go, there it is. And because it's holographic, it repeats at different scales, like fractals, throughout the universe.
I would say that what quantum physics is to the 20th century, whatever is going to be the new bridging of science and spirituality, that will be to the 21st century.
We are all creating the future. We are all creating what is outside of us. None of us are innocent in that regard. If there's something out there we don't like, we can't really turn our backs on it, because we're co-creators somehow or other. And we have to do the right things to try to get the future that is best for all of us.
We have talked so far about the freedom of our own personal life and quantum physics, that we are freeing and freeing and freeing our reality to ultimate realities. Yes, of course they exist. But after we have accomplished them, what then? What next? When do we make the shift from me to one? When are we the subconscious mind? When are we the knowledge of the one, transpersonal self?
When you start to realize what your true nature is, there is no question, there is no answer anymore. And there's just sudden realization. Now you come back from the rabbit hole and you start to perform in this world of illusion and wonder and magic with that understanding that you're never going to die and you were never born.
Choice by consciousness out of these possible events, the actual event of experience comes in. And so, for the first time, science encounters free will. Consciousness is free because there is no mathematical description of the subject. Only objects can be described mathematically, and only to the extent that there are possibilities. The question still remains paramount: who is the chooser?
Are all realities existing simultaneously? Is there a possibility that all potentials exist side by side?
Welcome to Flatland, a world of only two dimensions. Only forwards and backwards, left and right. In this world, there is no up and no down.
I said to Ray, where's Dottie? He said, well, she's out in line.
Where's that from? What the bleep is that thing? Huh?
In this world, the two-dimensional beings that live here have no concept of three-dimensional objects. These two-dimensional flatlanders have no understanding of cubes, spheres, tetrahedrons, or yours truly. From their 2D perspective, my 3D finger looks something like this.
What the flatter is that?
Hello, little circle. Fear of the unknown. Or should I say, not yet known. It's a puzzle. If we see only what we know, how does anyone ever see anything new? The unknown. How do we ever get out of our box? Hello, little circle. Don't be afraid.
Who said that? Where are you?
This is always the tricky part to explain. I'm in another dimension, another space. I am above you.
No, never use that word.
What word?
The A word.
Above?
It's forbidden.
Well, what do you think it means?
I don't know, and I don't want to know. You can be severely punished if you use that word. Are you a ghost?
I hope not. I just have a different perspective than you do. I can see things in a way you can't yet.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, okay, you have a safe hidden in your pantry. And inside it, you have 12 coins, a will, and a passport.
How did you know that? What are you? Are you a god?
Well, no more than you. You see, since I am above you, in the third dimension, I can see inside things in your world.
Third dimension? You are a crazy ghost. There's only two. Look.
So, if I were to touch the inside of your stomach, how would I do that?
Well, you'd have to cut through my skin. Otherwise, it's impossible. Stop!
Ready for more?
More what?
Dimensions.
Oh.
Directions.
No. Yes, but there aren't any. More? What will happen to me? What will I become?
You'd have to become it to know.
Okay.
Excellent.
I never knew.
Isn't it funny? That which we are most afraid of is what thrills us the most.
That has the effect of randomizing their X spins, and nothing else interesting happened to them after that. Okay. Good. It's an easy way to get a laugh here.
So you can't ask them their opinion, because you know what they're going to tell you. You're starting to act different. I liked you better the other way. And that's a great sign that you're making a change. You can edit that, though, if you had to, though, couldn't you?
Not prettily.
Edit it out the fire. Who can do the Heimlich?
Okay, are we rolling?
ギリシャの哲学者タレスが紀元前前に、言ったように、水は万物の源であるというふうに、私は信じています。
I study quantum physics. I sometimes teach it. I have written a book on quantum physics and many books explicating the meaning of quantum physics.
After my PhD from Harvard, I went to CERN, a European laboratory for particle research, but perhaps I'm best known for the discovery of the now famous n=1 locally supersymmetric flipped SU5 grand unified field theory. Don't make the mistake of thinking that the scientific community is scientific.
2 points. First of all, I want to thank David for healthy skepticism is important, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Now, the problem is that people defending the conventional approach to consciousness, brain equals mind equals computer, behave as if they've got proof and we don't. And they got, okay, pardon my...
Which formed the neural nets in the first place, which is what? The mind. What's the mind? The mind, thank you. This is called divine intervention. From above. But he has feet of clay.
I got involved with this because my evidence, no, start over. Okay. I can go back and fix that. Okay. Okay. My name is Lynn McTaggart. I'm author of a book called The Field.
I'm Dr. Daniel Monti. I'm a physician with specialty training in psychiatry and human behavior. I'm on the full-time faculty at the Jefferson Medical College.
I've heard some people say that, consciousness is this wonderful property in the universe that has a predilection for the human brain. If that's the case, then consciousness is about 3 pounds and looks a little bit like a gray cauliflower. It's showtime.
Tell you a little about myself. Oh, the light is blinking already. See, this is what happens whenever I speak. Weird things happen. Okay. All right, well, look, when I hold it, it stays on. What does that mean? All right. Oh, it's okay. Maybe God wants me to meet you.
Actually, we did this at a conference when we asked people how many people have had a gut feeling and so on, and 80% of the people say. And then to say, among those of you who are very skeptical of unconventional claims, how many of you, meaning now like 30% of the audience who doesn't believe in any of this stuff, how many of you guys have had interesting gut feelings that turned out to be right? 80%. So when people are skeptical about unusual things, it's completely understandable because there's all kinds of nonsense out there. But when you bring those phenomena into the lab and you exclude all of the ordinary ways of understanding them, it turns out that they do have a psychic component.
Here we are actually filming great thinkers. Everyone in this room is a great thinker. Now that we got them thinking, that's always a trick, isn't it?
You probably have more to say about this.
No.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Multiple personality disorder have to say about the seat of consciousness. And the second one is what made you want to become a physicist at the age of 50?
Okay, well, I guess multiple personality disorder. I actually wanted to become a physicist as young as the age of 4, believe it or not.
As we become more and more inner self-managed, okay, we will manifest the qualities of these deeper levels down the rabbit hole. And so we become a Qigong master, where we can influence things from thousands of miles away.
So if we begin to look at all that, it seems to me the only way out that I can understand is there is an intelligent presence. There is a kind of a one-mindedness that I call it, or God, if you want to call it that.
Ponder that for a while. What did I say? What are you gonna do with that? A bite! You took a bite out of nowhere.